So welcome to the training session about OpenStack's IRC, Internet Relay Chat, and its mailing list. This is intended to be an intro for anybody, but initially set up as part of the LCO working group. I'm Jamie McCabe, and I am the current group chair of the LCO group, and in the last 6 months, learned or figured out a good pattern for myself of how to use Internet Relay Chat and the user committee mailing list. So those are the things we'll be ending with a demo of today. Please feel free to ask questions and or prompt me as we go. So this intro for the LCO, as I said, we'll record it and hopefully it'll be useful by anybody. Seems especially appropriate though for the large contributing OpenStack operators working group because one of our goals is to increase our upstream contribution and to bring more and more people from our member companies to the upstream. Also initially, what we're trying to get into right now is increasing our contributions in terms of requirements, user stories to the upstream community. So we really do need to interface with the community to do that. And for both of these reasons, many of our staff are new to OpenStack and not IRC or mailing list savvy. Certainly not the specifics of how OpenStack uses IRC or mailing lists. So for all these reasons, it's a good idea for all of our members basically to take this training and or be familiar with the way to collaborate. So how will we go through this session? We'll start with the mailing list, talk a little bit about what the point of the mailing lists are in terms of user stories for mailing list, go quickly through the steps it takes to get set up, and then a little bit of demo. And then we'll do the same with IRC. And then Q&A. All right. So OpenStack mailing lists. First off. By the way, iCandy, that's going to be this part of the to get set up. It isn't actually, probably could show a better picture of what a mailing list looks like, but the end result, and we'll demo it a little later, is that you get emails from this mailing list. So the end result also is mostly just emails. What's the point of the OpenStack mailing list, though? That's, as all of us, the OpenStack collaborators, us in the working group, and everybody else who is contributing to OpenStack or even interested in OpenStack, interested in contributing, to monitor communications intended for the community. It's basically a giant way for anybody to send an email that everybody else should get. So, and as an individual, it lets you monitor all those things, get those emails that are intended for everybody to get. It's also very much the system by which we notify that there are meetings. Here in the LCO, we typically put you on an Outlook invite, but that's not the general way in OpenStack. There's a mail list that you put out a day or two ahead of time for meetings, notifying people that there's going to be a meeting and sending them the link to the agenda. And then oftentimes, and we do that too, then at that link there's also a place that you can click and add it to your calendar. But it's not exactly that you're just put on the invite in the first place. Almost ostensibly, and the first reason for the mailing list is for people to just ask general questions. So when you go to initial training, people will tell you, one of the first things in the new person's training is just send an email to the mailing list and somebody will get back to you. Of course, the other side of that is if you want to help others out, and that's a big part of being a collaborator or community contributor, is to interact with other people and to help people out. So, and then not quite the same sort of thing, but all this in a non-time bounded email style way. So emails, you can get to them when you want to get to them. And so email is, for that reason, email is an especially good way to go. So that's the user story behind the OpenStack mailing lists. So how do you get set up? First, you need to decide which email to use and request to be mailed at that mailing list homepage. And this, to the right, is the mailing list homepage for the user committee. So that's my point number 2 here, is to start at that page. So very easiest and the main thing for everybody here, if you aren't already in the user committee mailing list, I suggest that you go to this page and enter your desired email address to receive all this, and pick a password. You're not used to having it, by the way, it shouldn't be your email password. It doesn't really matter too much what it is, but it's if you need to come in here and change the options or that sort of thing, you need a password. So obviously write down that this is your OpenStack mailing list email address and password, and wherever you record the rest of your passwords. And subscribe. And the user committee is the mailing list that they would like everybody involved in working groups or have anything to do with the user committee side of OpenStack, separate from the technical side of OpenStack, which has technical committee and other mailing lists. But they'd like everybody to use this user committee mailing list for communicating even about your own working group. It's basically just to make sure that the most people see whatever you're communicating about. But there are other mailing lists, so further information, other mailing lists, you can see it in general if you go to the OpenStack Wiki mailing list, and the URL is here. And then finally, and maybe this is more of the demo, you can, once you're a member of a mailing list, you don't actually, obviously you missed all the mailing lists, mails that were sent in the past, and you can instead go to this URL, and this is one of the great things about mailing lists, and then look back through all the mail that's been sent. It's bounded automatically by month because there's so many things, but then a good thing, for instance, I went into the sort it by thread. So if someone told you there was a thread going on about UC candidacy, you could read and see everybody who's sent an email and even read what they sent. So for instance, this was Melvin's recent email asking to be considered as a new member, as a new chairperson of the user committee. By the way, he was elected, so congratulations, Melvin. But you can see that's why, if you're going to, in this case, if you didn't join, you wouldn't have seen Melvin self-nominate, and then when it came time to vote on the user committee, you wouldn't have been quite as educated as to who to vote for. So that was the point of this email. Okay, any questions about mailing lists? It's pretty straightforward, so.
Yeah.
And very useful, and okay. And definitely, it's a big point of contribution back to the community is even if you'll ask questions, that's a type of a contribution to the community, because other people can benefit from the answers that are provided. Okay, we'll go on to a slightly more complex, slightly probably less used. We all use email, but internet relay chat. So what's the point of internet relay chat? As a collaborator in the OpenStack community, you'd like to meet people interactively on areas of interest. So obviously that's a big part, almost behind the word community, is that the community gets together and works on things. And in this case, you could have done it in in email, but those are rather slow, and sometimes you want to have an interactive conversation. So that's the point of internet relay chat. In essence, it's a messaging program. A big thing about IRC is that it's all recorded, similar to how the emails are recorded. So that lets you refer back later. If there was a meeting in internet relay chat, you can review it if you missed it. Very often, these meetings are being done at a time zone that are not conducive to you, or nobody checked your schedule to see if you might have some other meeting going on at that time. So it allows you to review what was actually talked, who was in the meeting, and what they said. And it's very easy to translate it into your native language as well. So people can actually use a translating program and can interact through the internet relay chat, and that sort of crosses the language boundaries too. So in that regard, internet relay chat is just a really powerful tool, despite it's a very old and original protocol in the internet, in IP space. One of the things about our way of the meeting bot that uses internet relay chat but helps facilitate the meeting is that you can capture decisions and action items as well, and they're recorded in a sort of a short form after the meeting. But it also just helps that you're declaring in the meeting that this is a decision, this is an action item, that sort of thing. So, okay. That's the point of internet relay chat use. So how do you get set up? First, to get set up in it, you need to set up a nickname. I called it IRC ID here, but the official IRC term is nick, or nickname, and you can log into internet relay chat. Nobody's using a nickname. You can use it basically, but making it yours really means that you put a password on it, and then you use that password when you first join, so that that in essence that nick is yours, and nobody else, at least nobody else, unless they have your password, could use it. So the explanation for how to do all that is here at this URL, and I'm assuming that everybody here is fairly new to this, and so the easiest way to set up a nick is through the service called Freenode, and the vast majority of OpenStack users get their nick set up through Freenode. Freenode is not the only IRC server or service, but it's a fine one to start with. So the first thing is you'd log into Freenode, and you'd okay. So to go through that, basically, let me pull it up here a little bit. It's a little bit interactive demo, but this is the Freenode website. And to get started, even to follow those instructions, you'd go through basically this chat window. And even to get to the point where you could first register and set up a password, you'd have to choose something like some nick that hasn't been used yet, and get logged in this far. And so here you are at what's in essence a chat window with a prompt at the bottom, and now you could follow the instructions on the registration screen. I think they look generally like / message nickserv. In other words, you're telling the nickserv itself something and register, and then James nick demo. And then something like that. Anyway, I'm not sure this will work, but that's basically how you register and you have to spell it right. So I'm just giving a quick view. So from that command, so it did work. It's going to send an email off to you. And basically so that it can verify that your email really is a good email, like most things do. I probably won't go through and register this one, so it will expire, and anybody else who wanted in the future to try to register James McDemo could. But that's an example of the process you get through. And the rest of this is described. There's another step after you get that far to register your password, to actually register a password with that. But at that point in time, and now as I'm showing on this screen, JMIC is my IRC, and I know the password to it, and nobody else does. So at that point, really, it's a little bit complex, but but now you own that ID and password, and you could not only use Freenode as where you register, but you could use that actually as your ID and password, or as your IRC client, and you could join meetings. So actually the screen now that's showing is, if you went back through it, and that was kind of what I showed before, but if I log in as JMick, I can even specify the meeting channel that I'm going to join, and then when I end up in the IRC, I will be in that meeting, and as the rest of the people, or perhaps you're late, you'll already see people chatting away, but as the meeting starts, you'll see everybody chatting away. This is demoing that you have to check this, though at that point in time, you would check this authorization to services, and you'd type also your nick here, JMick in my case, and the password. I'm not a robot and connect, and basically this is how you log in with your password as opposed to just any old nickname that you happen to choose at that moment. So getting through the setup, now there are additional steps that some of us, a lot of people may end up going through, which is that you might want to use a different IRC client. In other words, not just go through the Freenode website to do your IRC. That's because there are other things that an IRC client will do for you that you don't just get through the web browser. For instance, one of the reasons here in AT&T that we have a separate IRC client is because we have a corporate firewall. So we use our own IRC server. It's actually ZNC, and then we give out everybody the HexChat client as well, so that everybody in our community, even with the firewall, even once we're inside of our company firewalls, we can still get out and use the IRC by connecting with the Freenode NIC that we've set up, but through our own ZNC server and the HexChat client. So that's an example of what a lot of people might do. Other IRC clients, by the way, if you were on the road a lot, you could set up an IRC client even on your mobile phone, and thus be joining meetings and or just messaging to people and helping out other people right off your mobile phone. Okay, so finally, as we were talked about there, review if I missed, all IRC meetings then are recorded by this thing called a meeting bot. Normal IRCs where you're not in a meeting aren't necessarily recorded, but others are. So for instance, I've just gone into a website that's showing the recorded meetings, and this is the user committee meetings, and in fact, so I'll give you an idea. Okay, so this is the summary. I went into it, but this is the meeting bot gives you a meeting summary. So as you change the topics of the meeting, there's a certain person who is running the meeting and typing in these. It'll record basically at what time they changed topics and what the name of the topic was. And then if anybody gives any URLs during that time period, it's recorded. And if anybody records any action items, it's recorded. So this is a summary of what an IRC meeting looks like after it's been facilitated and people are following the normal change topics and record URLs and action items. That was just the summary. So if you want to see the full text, you go to the log. And in general, this is what you'd see on the screen when you joined a meeting. In this case, it was the user committee meeting. You see who the facilitator is, Edgar Magana in this case, and then you see anybody else who's interacting and typing. And they're just typing down there at the prompt, saying hi to each other and getting on with the topics of the meeting. So this is a great example of a IRC meeting. Okay, so in general, that's the prepared part of about IRC. Any questions there? Anything I missed or obvious?
Hey, Jamie, this is Jill. For the meetings, or when you get into some of the lists, and whether it's IRC, are there bridges usually too, or are things done really through chat?
Yeah, that's great. So no, that's there are no bridges, right? Um,
Okay.
I've heard that that sort of a halfway point. So now we're getting into the into what how can we keep in the LCOO anyway, and in many companies we often have bridges, phone bridges or video bridges where we can talk to each other. And when we have a meeting, that's what we consider a meeting. But no, in traditional OpenStack, and for the reasons that anybody could join, wherever they were, and they can type and they can translate, they only have meetings in IRC. Or
Okay.
that's the original one, typed meetings basically. It does seem rather backwards, but there's for the reasons up here in the user story, that's why they do it. Probably getting beyond our training here, but I have been pointed out recently that there are some groups have tried to do both, basically be in the IRC meeting and also be on a bridge at the same time. And in fact, especially perhaps if you needed someone to translate, you could potentially have somebody typing into IRC whatever was said verbally as well. Might sort of help as a poor man's translator, but. But I haven't seen that done myself. It was just a suggestion from somebody. So.
Okay.
So for the most part, no. And I think for that reason that people in the IRC would miss out what was said verbally.
Mm-hmm.
Good question. Thanks.
Yeah.
I could demo a little bit more, but it was kind of there on the screen. What do you think? Is it demo of any of this needed? Almost would require two of us to be in, but to actually chat with each other. I didn't quite set that up.
How about, I don't know, did you cover conventions, that are followed in those chat sessions, like, in the meetings? There are certain keywords that are used and things.
I didn't. Let me go right here and pull it up. Yeah. IRC. Yeah, we'll go with OpenStack because these are these are open source products that even the meeting bot this is IRC meetings is what we want. So this is a good one, Andrea. I'll add it to the presentation or the meeting minutes afterwards. So here we go. So in general, at least where I'm taking the question in, is like, let's say most of once you're in a meeting, most people are just chatting, but anybody can, and the person in charge of the meeting really should know how to run the meeting and these extra commands. So here's on this page, the wiki openstack.org chair meeting guidelines. It says things like what we showed before. Edward Magana was one of the first ones in, or he was the first one to issue this command, start meeting, and then he called it UC. So he did the start meeting UC command. And then he changed the topics, which is why we saw that in the meeting minutes. He would say, are we done with that? Are we done talking about that? Okay, let's move on. He would type in, and then he'd put pound topic summit, next summit attendance or whatever he put in. Someone else, I believe, it might have been Ed, also then, often when you start a new topic, you'll give people something to look at. So you'll have a URL prepared, and you'll put pound link and the URL, and thus almost all IRC clients give you the ability to just click on that hyperlink. So that's another good reason to use the pound link, is it turns it into a hyperlink within the IRC client. So everybody at that point in the meeting would click on that link and then start talking about what they saw. And then the pound agreed, it doesn't do a lot. It mostly just puts the record in the meeting. More often this pound action is used, and that's for some reason our meetings in OpenStack are more geared around having actions and saying who will do what next than they are using the agreed. So those are the common ones. At the end of the meeting, the same person needs to end the meeting. Typical meetings are 60 minutes in length, though, so the meeting bot itself will end the meeting after 60 minutes. So it's not absolutely necessary to end meeting, but it's a good sign that everybody can go. Yeah, great one.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I'll add this to the...
I'm just saving that link.
Yeah, okay. But I'll put it in the notes as well. Yeah, if you can get to the point where you're actually running IRC meetings, then you're really a great service to the community and obviously the other people to have set up the meeting and to run it and take good notes and facilitate it. So that's it. That should be a stretch goal for everybody who takes the training is to try to get to the point where you volunteered to actually chair the meeting.
Okay.
So I'm ending with, okay, well, back to this. So all of that was done here, this is, pound action. It won't work here. So that, but right now I'm not actually in a meeting, so here it's telling me that, that it would make that might make more sense if you were in a channel, so you could join and then doing pound action would make more sense. Going back, so back to the channel would have been right here, and the main channel is pound OpenStack meetings. Meeting or meetings? I'm not sure. The other screen. There's a meeting for, there's a meeting alternate, and there's and then people often will have a channel just for their group as well. So the one that I know is the OpenStack operators. So this is an OpenStack operators, but they tend to meet in OpenStack operators. Any of the OpenStack operator groups. I guess that was almost answering my own question.
Okay.
Okay. I think that was pretty good. So hopefully that's a good intro. If you have questions, actually we'll put this out in our LCO Atlassian instance, and you can ask questions below that, as well as if you found this recording and the presentation, you'll have found the place to ask more questions as well. So please take advantage of that, and you feel free to reach out to me as well, Jamie McCabe, or anybody in the LCOO would be glad to assist with this sort of thing.
Thanks for setting this up, Jamie. This was good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you guys too for joining. It's so much better to have others.
Okay.